Oh, hi! This week, we're doing it. I'm doing it. We're finally doing it. I'm gonna make some motherfucking bias tape and show you how I go about it. I hope this helps. I don't know why I've been so cranky about answering questions about this. I think it's because I've been wanting to do a video on it and then just not having it in me to do that. So then I feel weirdly guilty when people are like, hey, can you talk me through doing this? And it's like, I know, I should have already shown you already. So for ease of mind, and hopefully to help, here's how I make bias tape. Here's what you need. I've already yelled at you about sour beers enough. If you don't tend to like beer, give sours a try because they don't really taste like beer. Also, you may have noticed the lighting is a little whack in this, but there is not floor space currently with all of my fabric bins out, and my ironing board is here for me to have my studio light tripods as well as the camera. So we're rolling with it. I'm just using a bunch of scrap pieces of plain ass cotton fabric. Normally you can fold your fabric into a square if you have a big chunk of fabric to work with, and you can fold it up a couple times and it goes very quickly, I think, getting big long pieces. But again, we're working with the scraps that I have laying around. We're gonna make it work. This rotary cutting mat does have a bias line. It's just a 45-degree angle. If you fold your fabric into a square, it's just a matter of going from corner to corner. And if you have fabric like this, let's see if you can see any of it on camera, but there's grain lines. This is probably helpful to show you, is there's a little bit of give to this fabric across this way. So selvage edge to selvage edge. If you go along the other way, there is no give. But if you go at a 45-degree angle, there's way more stretch. And that's what you want, is you want a little bit more stretch to it, because we're going to be making ties. It's going to make things a little bit more comfortable, give a little bit more adjustability. Okay, just for the sake of showing you the bias line through the fabric, because it's sheer. I can see this 45-degree angle here. Just make as many marks on whatever surface you have available to you, / just have a bigger mat than I do. So here's the deal. I'm just going to cut a straight line to start with. Great, and we'll continue working with this piece. Ideally, you'll iron everything out ahead of time. You can fold it in half this way, but if that's confusing you and you don't want to accidentally cut it in the wrong direction, then just keep it open and cut a longer line. So I am making bias tape that's going to be a 1/2 inch once everything is folded in on itself. So I want it to be that wide. So 1/2 inch times 4 is 2 inches. So I'm going to cut a 2-inch wide strip because it's going to start at 2 inches. These are going to fold in on themselves. So that's taking it in to 1 inch wide. And then that's going to get folded in half, which is 1/2 inch. Let's cut our 2-inch piece. Oh, and yeah, clear grid rulers are super helpful when you're cutting out anything on the rotary mat, just because you can see what the fuck you're doing. And yeah, I'm not even using the bias line on the mat anymore. I'm just using the straight edge of the fabric I've already cut on the bias. Just gonna cut as many strips as I can. I don't tend to go much smaller than a 4-inch. Is that how long this is? 5 inches. I mean, if you're desperate for fabric, absolutely use that up, but I'm just gonna put this tiny triangle in the dog stuffing bin. So now I've got a pile of strips. Generally, I make 20 times this amount, because I've been doing big batches of masks. I think I've made pushing 100, and I do it in probably the most tedious, painstaking way possible, because I'm making my own bias tape and then adding the bias tape strips rather than just doing the elastic. But I don't fucking like elastic ones, so it's worth it for me and just for the comfort of other people, unless they specifically want elastic. One other thing I like to do that is, again, made easier if you're starting with a big chunk of fabric, because all of this is already going to be nice and straight. I like to make sure that the ends of the strips are at a 45-degree angle from the rest of this strip. Is that making sense? So I want the ends to be on that straight grain. So having a mat with a bias line makes this super easy, but just any ruler, just pick a square that's 2 inches by 2 inches and lay it across, and you'll be able to figure out if it is at the right angle. Where these edges are they're almost, I'd call it a 40-degree angle, whereas these are exactly along this line. This is a little bit off. I don't know if you can see, any of this. God, why do I post tutorials on the internet? Boy, do I hope this helps like at least one person figure stuff out, because otherwise you're just watching me have a meltdown. As you can see, some of these little bits are like sticking out past the bias line, so I'm just gonna go straighten those out. And yeah, it was just a matter of cutting this much off, but these angles do matter. Okay, here's really the important part, and maybe the only thing that I'm helping you learn, because this is something I didn't know until about 2 years ago. So you have two strips you want to put together. You want these ends to meet up and then continue in a straight line. The way to do that, holding these together, putting it right sides together, and it's going to make it go at this wild angle. Let me actually do this on the mat so you can properly see what the fuck I'm doing, because holding it up against a white background is probably not very helpful. I need this to continue onto this, but how do we make it go? Oh, right. We attach it right sides together like this. So it's going to be a little triangular overhang over here, another triangular overhang over here. I want this sticking out about 1/4 inch, because that's how big my seam allowance is going to be. Just pick whatever seam allowance you want, make it as big or as little as you're comfortable with, and then you can pin it if you want. I don't pin these because it's such a short straight line to stitch. I haven't really had any issues. But again, if you're new to this, like, give yourself some compassion, be patient with yourself. So now I'm going to sew a straight line right across here, from this point all the way across to this point, all the way across. This is like a couple inches of space, but you get it. So I'm going to take my 2 pieces. I'll keep the black thread on just to show you. Hey, look at that. And then before I do anything else with it, I cut this overlap here. Like that. We get our clean little corners here now. And then we unfold it. Look at that. Okay. And then, yeah, you can attach as many goddamn pieces as you would like. And honestly, you're going to attach a lot of pieces together. And you're going to be like, that has to be enough for these 15 masks that I'm making. It's not. It's not going to be enough. You always need more. You need so much bias tape. This is most of my life now. Putting the masks together, it's probably 10 to 15 minutes from cutting the fabric out and marking out the pattern to getting to this stage where like darts are in, top stitching's done, pleats are sewn down. It's probably only 1/3 of the process. So how do we get this into that cool foldy shape? So there's a couple options. I do have a bias tape maker, but arranging some pins on your ironing board will get you the same shit. So I'm going to show you that. You will need an iron in and ironing board for this. Helpful if you warm your iron up before you get to the part where you need your iron. Every time, guys. Every time. Iron is heated up. Please ignore how disgusting it is. One day I'll figure out how to clean it, but today is not that day. Good thing I'm pressing onto white fabric. So I have this seam here from attaching the pieces, and you'll have to do this for every seam of each piece you attach. Again, white fabric on a pretty white surface. You're welcome. Pull it, you know, kind of taut. And then press that seam open like this, and it'll make it lay nice and flat this way. So for tools, I have this little bias tape maker. I have a smaller size, but I don't want to fuck with something that tiny, so we're just leaving that one aside. But I figured it was worth showing you, if you don't have one of these, how you can iron your bias tape just with pins on your ironing board. So I have my bias tape kind of hanging off the end here, and then I have 2 pins here. You can put whatever you want, but it's just going to kind of keep it coming onto the board straight, so it's not getting all twisted down this way. And I have 2 more pins. I had to fold it ahead of time already, and hopefully this works. I haven't actually done this yet, but the theory is there. So these edges are almost touching in the middle. I'm going to start ironing. Try not to burn yourself. Of course I'm left-handed, and all of this is set up for someone doing this right-handed. Cool. Theoretically, I should just be able to pull this, have my iron down here, and it'll come out, fold it in on the other side. For having not done this before, This is almost working better than the regular bias tape maker. Now this is the end, and I always seem to fuck up the ends, so we're not gonna worry about that. Avert your eyes. So you know, not too bad. And then I'll show you how to sew it on, but that's the only ironing I do for the actual bias tape. As for the actual bias tape maker, I likewise have 2 pins on the edge of my ironing board so I can have this hanging over, just so it feeds it in fairly straight. And I have this taped down just so it's not moving all over the place. And usually I'm standing at the ironing board where you guys are. So like your viewpoint is for someone left-handed, where I am gonna pretend like I'm a right-handed person. And same thing, I just kind of hold the iron down and pull just forever. I go forever. And yeah, sometimes it goes off center, like up here. This is the end, so it's getting cut off anyway, so I didn't bother futzing with it. But it does a pretty good job. I actually like having one side a little more narrow than the other, and I will show you why. Now, I guess. No time like the present, right? And hey, look, I'm even gonna unplug the iron now that I'm done using it for the evening. Okay, now, ready for some movie magic? I'm going to switch to the bias tape color I actually want to use for the mask I whipped together while the iron was heating up. I already have one, but this feels more me. The other one is like pink polka dots. And it's fine. I don't mind it, but you can't fucking beat Deathly Hallows with Doctor Who flannel on the inside. Also, I didn't want to show you how I tied the ties with someone else's mask, because that seems to defeat the purpose of wearing one in the first place. Okay, so I'm using up some leftover bias tape from previous batches, so there's going to be a mix of greens happening here. I hope you are not offended. I don't particularly give a shit, so it wasn't on that whole fucking time. God damn it. Okay. I've definitely been hitting the record button and shutting the camera off instead of starting a new clip, so I'm sorry if none of this is making any sense. But that's quarantine brain, baby! Anyways, here's the bias tape that I made the same way I made the stuff I showed you. I'm gonna unfold it. I'm gonna pick the narrower side because that means the second side, the one that's gonna get folded over and wrapped around, there'll be a little bit more and you're more likely to catch it with the second row of stitching. That will make sense once we get there. The first row of stitching, I take this right sides together and line it up against, yeah, the right side of this edge. I'll put a little iCard up in one of the corners somewhere showing another outfit I used bias tape on. I would tweak some things on how I made that dress, but just so you can see it in another setting, I would recommend checking that video out. Okay, so I have a pretty small stitch and lining my needle up with this like iron line. So somewhere between 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch in for this size bias tape. I'm gonna fold this edge up to that crease line and then fold this whole thing around to the back side. Basically, I'm going to do top stitching along that same edge we just did, but from the outside. And I want to make sure I'm catching this underneath. Oh boy, I did a very bad job on that. If I was making this mask for someone else, I would redo that part, but because this is for me, we're just gonna go back over it. So yeah, that first row, for some reason, probably the beer, I stitched like in the ditch, which is not what I wanted. I wanted to stitch this more visible line, like above my thumbnail. Let's just call this intentional, and I was trying to show you where not to stitch versus where to stitch. And then I'm just gonna cut the excess off, and this is what the edge looks like. Okay, let me do the second pleated side quick, and then we can do the strappy parts. The way I've been measuring my bias tape is I've been doing 2 strips of 40-inch lengths, and then I've been using one of those to do both sides of the mask because I have little bits of scrap bias tape to use up. I could just cut one of these strips a little bit shorter. So pick however you want to do it, but I currently have one strip that is 40 inches, and that will be the top strap. And then for the bottom, just because there's less to go around, I have it 5 inches shorter, which is 35 inches. I'm going to take whichever strip, top or bottom. I'll just do the shorter one because it'll be a little bit quicker to show you. I'm going to find the center point of the strap. I'm going to line that up, laying it down same way, right sides together, the narrower edge along the bottom edge here. Pin in the center if you want. Pin as much as you want. I don't use pins as much as other people, I think. And then I'm going to line it up till the edge of the mask. So it's going to overlap that bias tape bit we just added. And now I'm going to sew in that pressed line. Also, I figured out why I sewed a little bit to the edge on that last one. It's because I moved my needle accidentally at some point because I'm a ham-fisted ogre. So I thought I was losing my mind a little bit more than I initially thought, but everything's okay now. Also, like, it's almost midnight. Fuck ups happen. Whatever. Don't be too hard on yourself. All right. So yeah, I'm going to back stitch here and then work my way across all the way to the other side of the mask, and then I'm going to stop here. So I'm just sewing where it's actually attaching to the mask. Okay, so this is where we have things so far. And now we're going to fold this over the edge the same way for this part of the mask like we did on the edge here. Fold this bit and then tuck this around. I do like to put a pin here just to hold things there, and then kind of tuck along here. And then I am going to toss another pin at this edge. You can start here, sew across, and stop here if you want, and then deal with the actual strappy bits. It's up to you. Just find it quicker to start at the edge of the strip and do it all in one go. So I'm going to fold this in on itself, so how you ironed it, and then also fold that in half. You can fold the ends in on themselves. I don't have the patience to fuck with that, so I've just been cutting it at an angle. Oh, except these are garbage scissors. Hold on. Use proper fabric shears. There we go. So it's at an angle just because it's going to fray less. And you're going to fold the whole thing in on itself. I just kind of fold it in as I'm sewing, and then it's going to just glide right into where you have it pinned here. And you're going to go along this edge. And then once you're over this end bit, you're just going to continue that whole thing. Again, fold it in and pin it before you even get it under the sewing machine. But I like to do it as I sew. And yeah, if you fuck it up, just take out your seam ripper and give it another go. No one's here to judge. Oh yeah, and then just make sure your other end is snipped. And just keep an eye on that lower fold and make sure you're catching it from the top. I don't know if you noticed that, probably not, but rather starting at the very, very edge with my needle there, start my first stitch a little ways in, go back, and then go forward. It just seems to jam up less doing it that way. Ooh, am I giving you some of that good shoulder angle? Man, one day I'll learn how to use this fucking camera. Feel free to peek under at what you're sewing as much as you need to make sure things aren't like unfolding on themselves. All right, we caught the whole thing underneath, so that's good. You know, not a perfect job. I can only ask myself for so much right now. And then I'm just going to do the same thing with the top strap. And we will do a little test fitting once I finish this. See you on the other side of this jump cut. Right, and I'm going to trim some threads that I may have / definitely missed earlier. I think we're in good shape. Let's give this baby a whirl. I will say this, and it applies for every face mask I've ever had to wear. I can't have my glasses on when I'm wearing a face mask because they fog up. So thankfully, I only go to the grocery store once in a while. So it's just when I'm in there that I can't have my glasses on. And the post office. I guess those are the two places I've had to wear a mask. And yeah, I mean, probably not the most effective version, but it's pretty tight on the sides, and because of the pleats, it like tucks underneath here. It doesn't have a nose thing. Yeah, I already have limited lung capacity, so I understand the freak out feeling wearing a mask. It's not fun. It shouldn't be fun wearing a mask, but at least I can wear fun fabric and like it is some form of expression having fucking Deathly Hallows fabric. And yeah, I just tie them in the back. There's plenty of extra for my head. And I do have a pretty fucking big melon. I'm big. I'm a big person. I'm like nearing 6 feet. Not quite that tall, but like not that much shorter. And I do have a melon head. So I think 40 inches is probably a pretty good, like there was a ton of slack back there for me. So I think you're probably gonna be good with those measurements. But let me know if you have made your own. Talk to me about your face mask journey if you're totally against wearing them, even though, you know, the CDC is recommending we wear them out in public places, and I am going to listen to what the sciencey people are telling me to do and not, okay, I can't even get into it. Today is the 23rd. If you know, you know. I can't. I wish I lived somewhere else. Can't let the bastards get you down. You just have to hope that people are making smart decisions about their own health and for others, even though many people aren't. But you know, you gotta just do your best. Oh, I can feel my chest tightening thinking about some of the stuff that happened today, but we won't get into it. That's not what we're here for. It's a little bit of what we're here for, is to decompress. Really been enjoying making them, and again, I don't know why I have an aversion to making a video. I mean, it seems like a hot topic and like it's somehow politicized, and that doesn't make sense to me. So that kind of shit generally makes me pretty nervous. So bias tape at least is a helpful thing, where I think a lot of people have the actual pleated part down. If not, I'll link to Angela Clayton's video in the description where she walks through pretty much everything pretty thoroughly except for making bias tape. Hopefully this helps. Even if you just had me on in the background while you did your own shit, let me know what you're working on, face masks or not. I feel like my life just is consumed by these now. Yeah, this'll be up Friday the 24th, so let's do another live stream tomorrow, Saturday the 25th. Again, probably late morning. That seems to be a good time, and when I get around to rousing for the day and finishing my chores. I really like doing my chores on Saturday mornings. Yeah, maybe we can have like some spiked coffee together and just decompress with each other. It's really been helping me, these live streams. I feel like it's our little gang. I've been leaving them up after they're done, so if you haven't been able to catch any as they're streaming, I've also been hearing it takes a day or two for them to show up in subscription feeds and people haven't been getting notified, so I figure it's worth mentioning if you haven't been catching them and you're like, damn it, I didn't know what was happening and I was around, because that happens with me, with people that I like to follow, so figure I would mention it. It's like pushing 1 a.m. I'm usually asleep by 8:30 p.m. Sometimes we'll push it till 9. This girl is a sleepy boy and needs to go to bed. Maybe not even finish this beer. Oh, but it's so good. Maybe I'll stay up and try to edit. We'll see. If this video is up after noon tomorrow, today, when you're watching this, you will know that I just conked out and went to bed. But I'm going to try to stay up. All right, yes, whether I stay up or not is besides the point. I'm going to go. I will see you back here with a live stream tomorrow, and if not then, another video next Friday. Thank you so much for hanging out. Y'all are the best. And now, because of all my flailing, I have lost my rotary cutter.